Do we mute ourselves?
Yeah, sure, go ahead. Folks are gonna
Okay, I didn't know if we...
Oh yeah, no worries. We've got folks sort of trickling in right now. Welcome to all. Our participants, our panelists can go ahead and mute themselves or not mute themselves while folks enter the room. We're seeing as folks trickle in, if you want to go ahead and put your name, where you're from, in the chat box. That'll just sort of help us to ensure that all is working as it should. I will also go ahead, in the interest of time, sort of go through some housekeeping, and then we can go ahead and do introductions. So let's see here. This webinar will be recorded. We'll make sure to make it available after the fact via the emails that you provided when you signed up. You'll notice that you are muted as a participant, but we encourage you to use the chat box or the Q&A function. We have a variety of questions prepared, but we prefer everyone to submit something if they have something in mind. And panelists, if you see something come through on the chat box or the Q&A that you think you can respond to, and it's right up your alley, feel free to do so. A little about us. My name is Casella. I am the Director of Engagement and Advocacy Initiatives, and I am joined today with Adam Smith, and I will let him introduce himself.
Thanks, Allie. Thank you so much. If everybody can please throw in the chat where you're coming from, it always helps our panelists to know so we can tailor our conversations, what institution, what part of the country, part of the world. If you're a TRIO professional, if you're pre-college or you're SSS or McNair, that'd be really helpful too. I am Adam Smith. For my day job, I'm the Executive Director for University Academic Advising at the University of Kentucky. And I do significant work with my nonprofit partners and colleagues at Boreta College Foundation. We are putting on this great webinar today with advising and student success professionals from all around the country who have taken their time to be here. So please make sure that you throw out your questions. I'll moderate, and I've got some stuff to ask. It's always better if you're asking, right? So please, if you have questions, comments, we want to make this a dialogue and a conversation. We're going to have our colleagues introduce themselves. They represent universities around the country, various student success roles, mostly advising and admissions, but various types of advising as well, and how that looks, because you know advising is different depending on your institution, also sometimes depending on the colleges within your institution. So we're going to talk about that, but we're also, the main reason we're here is we're going to talk about the inequities that have kind of been exposed, not kind of, have really been exposed in this historic time of COVID-19, of response to systemic racism, and kind of an amplifying of some very angry voices in our country and some things. So we want to talk to practitioners today about how those inequities exposed have affected not only their work, their students, their campus, but more importantly themselves. So without further ado, we'll introduce our panelists. And so the first thing I'd like you all to do, and we'll start with Jamaica, is please introduce yourself, talk about your institution and where you work and your role there. But I'd like you also, each one of you, to talk about, just like when the flight attendant gets on the plane and says, you know, the oxygen mask may fall if cabin pressure drops. Put a mask on yourself before you take care of anyone else. And we're all in this work because we want to care for and support our students and others. But how are you, Jamaica and everyone else, how are you practicing self-care? How are you at this time? You're in Minneapolis, St. Paul, Derek Chauvin trials getting ready to start. We were just talking about the continued trauma that now that's going to cause, not only with your students and a community, but it's going to cause you every day having to deal with that in downtown St. Paul. So talk about how you're practicing self-care at this really historic time.
Sure. So my name is Jamaica Delmar, and I work at Metropolitan State University in Minneapolis, St. Paul. We actually have 4 different campuses. So I work out of the Minneapolis campus in downtown Minneapolis. Metropolitan State University, one thing that's unique is that we have had in our vision statement long before 2020 that we do strive to build an anti-racist learning community. And so I've felt very, very fortunate to work there over this past year. That whole idea of self-care has never been more apparent to me as someone working in higher ed until this past year. You know, I think during this past summer, it really came up for me because we were up all night because of the civil unrest. You know, our neighborhood, much of it has burnt down, and I have a lot of my advisees who I know live nearby me. So, you know, just making a point to reach out to them. At the same time, I'm losing sleep and super stressed, and I got really, really burnt out at the end of the summer. And so I've really tried to be intentional these past few months about well, taking advantage of mental health days, actually, trying to get out of town, I like going up to the woods and just being up there alone. But part of self-care for me is also connecting with other people who are feeling kind of the same trauma I am and talking through that with them. And so again, I've actually been really fortunate to have some colleagues at Metro State that I can do that with. But, you know, we've been talking lately about compassion fatigue, which is a real thing. I mean, and you can't pour from an empty cup. We know that. So I did spend some money on a new silk robe recently, you know, just trying to bring some beauty and comfort in a lot of different areas of my life. So it has been rough. It's something I've had to be really intentional about.
Jamaica, thank you so much. Shanice, do you want to introduce yourself? Same question. What you do, where you do it, who you do it with, and then how are you taking care of yourself during this historic time?
Hi, everybody. My name is Shanice Smith. Thank y'all for being here. I'm so excited as well. I am an academic advisor at the University of Alabama in Tuscaloosa. I specifically work with football student athletes. I've been doing this for going on 4 years now. So my role has kind of changed within that. And especially now it's starting to get, or it kind of has been, it picks up with the responsibilities that's required of me. And I think that that's something that I have been trying to adjust with as well and try to figure that out, kind of the same that Jamaica was referencing to. And I think with me, when it comes to self-care, it looks a lot of different ways. I agree with, you know, trying to buy yourself something to, you know, make yourself feel better, kind of like about the situation and things that you're in. I have a dog. I like to take walks with him. I'll be very intentional with the schedule that I now have. It's very demanding. So I have to be very intentional with when I try to take those breaks. And it's just like you set that alarm on your phone and it says, get up and go for a walk. You stop everything and you go. Because those things are really important when it's just like I beat myself up a lot when I don't take advantages of those times that I know that I need to. And I sit there and I continue to work, like that's on me and that'll then affect me. So I try to be very intentional with the things that I do. So I like to take my dog for walks. I enjoy spending time with him a lot. I also like to work out. That's something that I try to do, you know, just for myself and kind of like how we said, pouring into yourself. Like, how do you do that? Well, I've deposited a coin in the bucket for myself today. Feel like I've made myself better. Now I can go and make other people better. I can be better for my students, more intentional with my students, more fully aware with my students. Now I feel like I've given to myself, then now I can give to others. And then another thing that I also like to do is I use my sick days. I think that a lot of where I am, and it might just be the University of Alabama and, you know, the sport in which I work with, there's a lot of hardworking people. And I think that the hours, it tends to be a lot. It's past the normal 8 to 5 kind of thing. It's pretty much all of the time being with these students. And I think that's fine. It looks different for other people, but I decided to use that time that I've built up. And I know that I'm not going to get that back. So I try to use that. I do take advantage of different things that the university offers with different counseling services and things, because I find that to be very important. Mental health should never be something that we shy away from or something that we decide not to talk about. So I want to throw that in there as well, that I do that. And those are the different things that I feel like I try to make sure that I'm good for myself so that I can then go and be good for my students and my coworkers and my family and my dog. So those are the different things that I kind of do here in Tuscaloosa.
Okay, Ms. Smith, thank you so much. Mr. Wilson from Big Blue Nation up there, can you tell us a little bit about what you do, where you do it, and how you are taking care of yourself during this historic time? Muted.
You know, my situation is a little bit different. I guess you could say I'm kind of a loner anyway. So this whole COVID thing ain't really bothering me like that. I mean, I'm at home anyway, so it ain't no big deal to me. But I think it's important, you know, to stay in touch with family and friends, and you know, I always try to reach out and connect. With my students, there's a lot of course, emailing back and forth and Google Voice and all that kind of stuff. But just trying to send out weekly emails to them as I kind of work my caseload, send out weekly emails, just trying to find out how they're doing, you know, giving them tips on, you know, being successful in the classroom, those kinds of things. It helps me to stay focused as well. I've got a caseload, like most of us, of some 130, 35 students. And so that keeps me busy just trying to keep in touch with them and keep up with them. At the University of Kentucky, um, there's several programs that, as you might imagine, it's Black History Month, so there's a lot of that's going on too. But you know what I really noticed this year, and what I like about Kentucky at this point, is that they really try to think outside the box when it's coming to like COVID-19 and you know all of the trauma that we've gone through over the past 4 years, specifically the last 9 months or so. But I noticed that academic departments are doing more to reach out for Black History Month. Like we know if you click on to, for example, our chemistry website, you'll find they're celebrating and highlighting a lot of the Black chemists over the years that's been at UK, and also, you know, just historically. So I'm finding out that departments are really doing better. Math department, talk about Black mathematicians. I didn't see a whole lot of that, you know, recently in my work life. So I thought that was pretty cool to have that happen. But you know, for me, for the most part, you know, you get out, you walk, like Shanice said, you try to work out a little bit. I'm a little better at working out in the summer than I am in the fall, in the winter, because I kind of do a lot of old school stuff. I don't really go to the gym. I'm just out there like running up and down the street and acting crazy. So when it's warm, I can do more of that.
Tyrone,
But
can you tell everyone what is your current role and how long you've been in this type of advising work?
sure. Currently, I'm a senior academic advisor at University of Kentucky, out of the College of Arts and Sciences. I mainly advise students who are STEM majors, psychology majors, and that's kind of my caseload. I've been doing this kind of work for a long time, 30 plus years. And a lot of people ask me, you know, why do you do that work, and why have you done it for so long and you never wanted to do anything else? It's because I really feel that my calling is just trying to help students to get to where they want to be in life, you know, through education. I look at myself as just a rung on the ladder, you know, just step on me to get to where you need to be. And that's what I've done, and I've been happy doing that.
Awesome. Thank you, Tyrone. Linda, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your current job, where you work, the type of advising, because Tyrone talked about that, and then how you've been practicing self-care during this last year or so?
Sure. I'm Linda Smith. I am an advisor at the University of Tennessee. I've been advising now probably 2 years in my current role. I've been working with students for a number of years. The type of advising that I do is a little bit different. I usually help students who are in transition, so they're between majors, whether they were dismissed from their current college due to GPA, or new transfer students that are coming into the university that may not be eligible for their current major of choice. So, it's a lot of, making sure that my students, understand where they are in the process and making that transition and how the grades equate to financial aid and whatnot. And sometimes it's having those hard conversations with students about having to change that major because it just, because of GPA reasons or financial aid reasons, it might not work. So self-care for me is intentional, like everybody else mentioned. I take a lunch hour. I never miss a time to go outside. I walk. I can eat lunch and take a walk in the office because right now we're working partly remotely and then some in the office as well. I take walks at home. I do not work on the weekends. I shut it down. I mean, it just has to be real intentional. But one of the things that's key is making sure I tell my students to do the same thing. See, because I know that with COVID and everything that's going on with online classes, family issues, stuff that's just going on in life, I tell them to make sure that they're doing the same thing, is that they're building some time in their schedule so they can take care of themselves, physically, spiritually, mentally, spending time with your family and your friends. We just had a birthday party for someone here over Zoom, not that long ago. So that was a great way for us to connect with family and friends. So it's just really being intentional. And I think this time, during COVID, we're finding like a new normal now. So we're not going to go back to our old ways. This is something that I think that we need to, keep practicing, because for a lot of us, like Shanice mentioned, working those long hours, and not taking a break. And before you know it, it's like, oh my gosh, it's 6 o'clock, it's 8 o'clock. So, being intentional is key to staying well.
That's really good. I think one of the things that's interesting, Linda, that we found out today at the University of Kentucky, there is over 700 freshmen right now at Kentucky, freshmen, first-time full-times, that are taking 100% online courses. And most of them, 400 and some, are living in the residence halls in Lexington. So when you start talking new normal, they're going to demand it. And that number was 200 in the fall. So now in the spring, they're saying, you know what, even in Lexington, Kentucky, it snows, and I don't want to walk across the quad. So how do we adapt to this new normal? And it's forced institutions like Bama and Kentucky and Tennessee and Ohio State, who in the past, we didn't do online well. We left that to the smaller schools and the regional campuses and the community colleges and the private schools. It's forced us to step our game up a little bit to be able to compete in this marketplace. So mentioning the Ohio State University, last but not least, our admissions professional, Mr. David Barnes. David, can you introduce yourself, talk about your role at Ohio State and how you are practicing self-care during this time?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm David Barnes. I work at the Ohio State University, go Bucks, OH, of which I am an alum as well. My current role within the university is in enrollment services, where I assist with management of undergraduate student applications, that review process. But my background also includes work in residential education, student identity development, multicultural services, and higher education, student success, and access work. Really excited to be here. Thank you, Adam, for inviting me to this panel. I'm amazed by this panel. I've been taking notes already. It's already been a great conversation. As far as self-care goes, that's really what I've mainly been taking notes on because I need to do a better job of that. But I have been doing my best, as we all have over the past year or so. I go to the gym. That's something that some folks on this panel might be surprised to hear, but I go to the gym every now and then. I need that to kind of clear my head and just kind of get moving. That's been extremely helpful for me over the past year. Masked up, but definitely in there. Also, for me, I'm also kind of more of a loner, more of an introvert, so it hasn't been too much of a problem for me to not go into the office, but I think one thing that I've learned over the past year is how important those connections are. I think I appreciate people and relationships more than I ever did before. So I call people. I don't worry about if I'm bothering them or if they don't want to hear from me. You're going to get this phone call right now. And you need to call me back later, that's cool. But you're going to know that I care and that I want to hear from you. I want to check on you. So just reaching out to family and friends, as many of us have already stated before, reaching out to folks, and a lot of Netflix. A lot of Netflix. I've already finished Netflix. Now I'm moving on to Disney Plus. So just doing everything I can to just take care of myself and make sure I'm good. Thank you.
David, that's great. I think one of the things that we were talking about somebody having a surprise 50th Zoom birthday party, which was epic for that person. But the cool thing was you had this fantastic Facebook Live birthday party where you were playing your favorite music and people were fellowshipping and people. And the cool thing is, I think what this has really taught us is that it's okay to just be who we're blessed to be, right? And people are more now than ever making room for that. You know, where I've known you a long time. I was like, is this the David Barnes I know? But you were truly in and living your best life and being who you are and getting joy out of that and spending that doing the things you enjoy. And knowing the one thing that this has taught us, just a virus no one can see and a bunch of anger and outward hate, is how important love and space and loving ourselves is and investing in ourselves. One of the things I wanted to quickly talk about is how much this has revealed a lot of the needs of our students. So many of our students, when campuses closed back in March, right? They not only got a pink slip because they were working on campus, they got an eviction notice, right? And many of our students have been, they don't have a home to go to. The home is not a place that's physically, mentally, emotionally safe. A lot of our LGBTQ students had to go to a home that they can't be who they are, right? And it's just been extremely traumatic. So I wanted to ask Jamaica in specific, because I know Metro so well. Jamaica, can you talk about how Metro, because it's post-traditional, predominantly BIPOC students, how does Metro nuts and bolts? Because I love the anti-racist vision and mission. I love the work of Metro at the nation's woke university. I get that. But what does Metro do to kind of provide some of those nuts and bolts infrastructure, basic needs for not only students, but the community in Minneapolis-St. Paul?
Yeah, so I'm not sure if I mentioned, but I am an academic advisor for the College of Management. Like I said, it was located over in Minneapolis. But so we don't have a residential campus. And I think, we had some resources before COVID hit that were great. We had a food pantry, we had a student parent center. But what I've seen in the past year is just how everybody recognizes that those wraparound services or those basic needs services, how extremely important those are to academic success. So for us, we have the food pantry, but now we've recently started doing cultural specific bags, which I think is fantastic. So we have so many different students from so many different parts of the world. So instead of just everybody getting, you know, some mac and cheese or whatever, we have culturally specific bags, which I think is great. We have a lot of student parents at our institution who have families of their own who are now homeschooling. So I know that when they can pick up those food bags, they can also pick up some kits for their children, some activity kits to do. You know, we got that CARES funding, which unfortunately wasn't able to serve all of our students. There was some parameters around which students could get that funding. But, you know, we also realized that a lot of our students, even though we were already, you know, at least half online, a lot of our students don't have that, that technical, that literacy, you know, with technology, are working off their phone. So Metro State had a laptop loaner program. We are able to provide hotspots for some of our students. I know I've heard of a couple students who are, you know, in a parking lot trying to get on some public Wi-Fi to be able to log on to their classes. So I think Metro really recognized a lot of those challenges that our students bring with them and are trying our best to meet those needs. It's hard though, I'll tell you, I feel like this spring is actually worse than fall as far as students reaching out to me and just really struggling in a number of ways. So, you know, financially, yes, you know, losing jobs and not being able to pay for rent or food, but also just the emotional tax that the past year has taken on our students. And so we do have, you know, free counseling for our students as well. And that's one cool thing I think about COVID is now we know we can do counseling via Zoom. We know students don't have to come to campus to get some of these services. We can do them remotely. So I think we're trying, we're trying our best to support our students in many different ways.
Yeah. Thank you, Jamaica. I think one of the things that's really cool about Metro is that the line between community and university is really blurred. Right? And so the university is really part of the community, like literally 50-year-old campus, partnering with Ramsey County to hand out kits to everybody in St. Paul. I think the drive-up food pantry a couple weeks ago had 600 families that drove through it, and you didn't have to be a Metro student. Anybody could drive through the food pantry. So those are some really cool things, especially for students who weren't low income before, and now all of a sudden you are. That your institution has, because when you are low income, there's some strategies and you know what programs and services are out there oftentimes, but when all of a sudden you've dealt with disruption and loss of job, it's great to have an institution that's being proactive in those ways. One of the things, and we have a question I'm going to get to in the chat, but I wanted to quickly ask Shanice a question about athletics, right? So I think one of the things people assume is, well, athletics has all this support, and that's true. But I know Alabama's athletic program is a 92% graduation rate, right? 92%, with students who are primarily low income, first generation people of color, that football team, right? Some of the coolest things is the number of graduate patches that national championship team, those guys had on. Guys who are like Mac Jones, who have a master's degree, right? I mean, just crazy stuff. What are some of the things, Shanice, because you were a student athlete too, what are some of the things that athletics does for student athletes that you think could be grown bigger for what student athletes would call normals, right? Normal students. What are some of the things that you all do that I think are best practices or special sauce that the rest of us who work with normals could learn something from?
I feel like here at Alabama, and I know it's different in a lot of places, I feel like we give our students a lot of like the safety nets, I think that we talk about for our students, so that we don't necessarily allow them a chance to fail or to necessarily experience failure in that way. And I think that sometimes that can be a good thing. And I think that sometimes that can be a bad thing. I feel like we kind of each semester try to weigh on what the support looks like for each individual student. So that'll look different for different people. But I think as a whole, when it comes to our overall support, I think them having an advisor, someone that they can come to every day in terms of, I need help with my financial aid, or I need help getting to my class, or I need help figuring out how this class is even run versus like AV classes, face-to-face classes. Like these students don't know these things, especially the ones coming in from high school. Like that is their new normal, but they're still figuring out what that college looks like. So what we do is we do different programming. So like right now we are doing a Spring Bridge transitional program that'll help the students that just came in from high school. They haven't even graduated high school yet. Their graduation is in May. Yes. So they're here right now taking these classes and trying to figure it out. So we try to help them lay the foundation, for what they need. So I think having a partner as an advisor, so we require them to meet with us, and that's fairly either daily or a couple times a week, depending on the student. So we have a lot of support set up with them when it comes to study hall and tutoring. Like a lot of the things are set up, we have the right tutors for the classes that they need. So a lot of the things are kind of set up for their success when they come here. A lot of it is just having the students commit to the process with it. I think that we also utilize the coaches a lot. I think the coaches can be a good motivational tool for these guys. I think when you look at, okay, I'm coming to Alabama, you look at the guys that go pro, but I think a lot of them do also care about their academics. So I think that the coaches as well, it's important for the overall buy-in from everybody. And they really do help that process in trying to teach them things that they need to down the line. And that includes like our career and our transitional program or our community outreach program, which I would think for us, I would like for that to be something bigger that our students can take advantage of. A lot of their time is taken up from football, and you understand those things and those requirements. But I think as us as academic advisors, we try to instill different things that these students will need once they are done playing football. And those are the things for me, why I try to take my job so seriously and hold these students to a very high level, is because they aren't always looked at in that way. They're just deemed as like, oh, you're a really good football player and you're here. And I just want to try to open up their minds to other things that they are capable of and some things that they don't even know. So I think that those things are really important. A lot of the students, like Adam said, they are low income. They don't have a lot of those like technology things. So like they provide iPads for them, like football does for them. And, we have laptops and things that we give them so that helps them with their overall school and how they can feel prepared and giving them the tools that they need so they feel like they can tackle it. Because a lot of them are, school is just, it's not always the forefront, or it hasn't been the forefront in their lives. So trying to kind of change those steps for them can sometimes be kind of give and take, pull of hate kind of thing. But I think the more that you work on it with them and you try to get them to see the beauty behind all of it, it's a really cool process. So I think that we have a lot of different barriers and things set up, safety nets for our students. And I think that that's something that we're trying to do, is figure out what that support looks like for each student so that we're not hindering their success, and we're trying to build them up with everything that we do have at the university for those students.
And just one thing I want to just brag on Shanice a little bit, because she's my kid, so I can is in the end, having somebody who was a student athlete, who the student athletes can look at you and say, okay, I couldn't have ran track. And you kind of get it. And so there's a level of respect and understanding, and a level of understanding that it has to be intrusive and it has to be intentional. And you don't really care whether they're a starter and it's Tua and he's playing for the Dolphins, or it's somebody who never plays. In fact, you may not even know sometimes. So it's really more about that holistic support. And one of the cool things because just being acquainted with Alabama football is that there's something that's happening when you have guys that sign multi-million-dollar contracts and go to the NFL and they still come back and graduate.
Yes.
My STEM students, I mean, Jamaica, seriously. I mean, how many of our students, you could tell them you have your dream job and you're going to make 15 million a year, and you don't have to finish school, and you're in your dream job and you come back, Marlon Humphrey, I mean, go down the list, right? Derrick Henry, those guys all came back and got their degrees, and they're NFL football players. So it's something that's being taught there that for the rest of us, for working with normal students, I try to learn from, right? So it's a good thing. One of the things I wanted to pivot and
Adam,
yes,
I
ma'am.
just have a quick question for Shanice. Shanice, I'm just wondering, like, how large is the caseload that you work with? Because, you know, working with a really large caseload, as much as you try to be intentional, it's a little more difficult if you're working with 100 and, you know, upwards of 100 plus students.
Yes. Yes. So if you look at it in terms of scholarship athletes, we have around 70. We also do keep up with our walk-on students just to make sure that, you know, if their number is called, that those students are eligible and they're going to be ready. So everything is, what I've learned a lot about it is it's a business, and the business calls for you to be very accurate and intentional with everything. But for me personally, so there's a group of 5 of us that work with football in total. So we kind of split from that. Our caseload is about 15 to 16 guys. And that includes everything. You are setting up all of their tutoring. You are making sure that their schedules are set. You are communicating with their coaches. You're sending the coaches their schedules. Everybody needs to be on the same page because of what everything, the big picture of it being football, we work around that. And I think that is something that we know as being here at the University of Alabama. And I think that that's something that you just kind of figure out as you go. But yes, we work with about 15 to 16 students, and that includes everything that comes with those students. So that means contacting their parents if need to, that comes from you, all coaching, communication, if they have any issues, everything, you keep up with those students in every single one of their classes. So like sometimes I feel like I'm back in school myself when I have my 15 guys and then they're in 5 classes. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I have all these classes. So that means you being knowledgeable about those classes, you communicating with those professors. If my supervisor were to ask me something about a class, like knowing it. If a coach is going to ask you something about a class, like knowing that. So a lot of the pressure is on a lot, but I think that it also keeps you on your toes and makes you a better advisor. And I do think that those things do kind of contribute to why the students come back, because I do feel like they have that safety. I do feel like they feel like we are there to really help them. It's a true partnership. And I think that once you really commit to the process and buy in, I think that it can really work. I think the graduation rate that we have is extremely, extremely awesome. And it shows that the guys are willing to put in the work when you kind of give them reason behind it. And I think that that's something that we work on daily, is trying to get that motivational piece behind it outside of football.
Yeah, love it. Well, and one of the things I wanted to, great question, Linda. One of the things I wanted to make sure our trio, because I know my trio family's on here, right? Trio, put 1 in the chat for me, please. Anybody who's trio, throw 1 in the chat. What TRIO does, and what TRIO has done since the Educational Opportunity Act of 1964, are the same things athletic does, right? So TRIO does structure, intention, holistic, intrusive. See, those models are scalable. TRIO is the vaccine for college to and through college, and has been that since 1964. And so when people told me when I started in higher ed as a TRIO director, well, you can do that because you have more money and more resources and less students. Okay, athletics can do it because they have more money and more, but it can be scaled, right? It can be scaled. It's about intention and intrusive and intentional. My TRIO colleagues would say, many of the college TRIO colleagues on campuses, when institutions are starting their own first gen thing, they say, well, we already have a model, just give us a couple more people and we can serve 500 more students, 1,000 more students. It isn't if you're going to graduate in TRIO, it's when, right? It isn't if you're going to graduate in athletic. And Shanice is talking about football, not the real student athletes that are the women, right? Who are getting 4.0s in nursing and swimming year round, right? That's a whole different ballgame. So one of the things I wanted to pivot and ask Tyrone, because there was a question in the chat. So Tyrone, there's a lot of talk about K-12 teachers being essential workers. What have you heard at the University of Kentucky, because that's where you are, about how higher ed is being approached? So how is UK approaching higher ed staff and faculty as essential workers? And what would it take for you to feel safe returning to campus? Because I know right now you're remote. So what would it take for you to feel safe going back to campus?
Well, I think that, at the university, like many institutions across the nation now, they're looking at being more normal, if you will, in the fall. People have a lot of high hopes, a lot of expectations for the vaccine that's out now. And so people are looking at now, I noticed that in one of our staff meetings just recently, whereas we were 70% of our class met online this past fall, 2020, but 2021, we flipped that. Now people are starting to go back into the classroom. And so 70% of our classes for fall 2021 is now person to person. Because again, everyone is having, high hopes for a kind of normal way of teaching again. I think that the universities are doing vaccinated. I think that the percentage of people who've been vaccinated at UK now is, I don't know what the percentage is, but I've heard a lot of talk about it being somewhere around 65 to 70% of our staff has been vaccinated now. And so that's a good thing. Now, for me personally, I'm just going to be honest. I'm just going to be straightforward about it. I'm not trusting none of it. It's too many variant viruses out there now. We don't know how this vaccine is going to deal with that. We don't know how long people are going to be vaccinated, how long they're going to be safe. We don't know any of that right now. And so my whole thing is, I kind of like the whole concept of being consistent. When you start changing a lot of stuff before you figure out what's going on, that's when people run into problems. Okay, students just now figured out, and I think Linda can attest to this. Most of our students now have just figured out how to actually go to class online. They just figured that out, and now we're going to change it again. So we just keep changing things because we want to make ourselves feel good instead of taking a look at how we can protect and serve the students best. I mean, it should be a situation now that if a student wants to learn online, we should accommodate that. We shouldn't force students to go back to the classroom because that's something that we want to have happen. We should be flexible enough now that if a student wants to take all their classes online, let them take their classes online. They want to go back to the classroom, like for example, my STEM majors, as you guys all know, they learn best kinesthetically with the chemistry and the math. They like to be in the classroom and have a relationship with the professors. It helps them learn better. It's tougher to learn math online as it is, to learn in person. But for me to go back in the classroom, a whole lot of stuff gonna have to happen. First of all, time's gonna have to pass by. I mean, I'm not comfortable going back in the classroom in the fall. It's just too many things changing too quickly, and we just don't have enough information.
But 70% of the campus has been vaccinated.
Yeah, that's what I hear. I don't know if I believe
70.
that.
Oh, 70.
That's
Like,
a lot.
yeah, 70.
Ty, I just wanted to say, I think it kind of varies with this vaccine state to state, right? And who gets vaccinated, who's on the list first. I think there's this I don't know, this website. I think, Adam, I sent you that information where you can kind of look up your state to see exactly, what's going on, how many people have been vaccinated. and you put in a few filters or whatever, and then it comes back to tell you, well, here in Tennessee, you're on the list maybe for the summer. So a lot of people have not been vaccinated at the University of Tennessee. So I think that's phenomenal. 70% at UK. That's a good thing. And hopefully, with this pandemic, that they're looking at changes, because things have changed. There is no going back to normal. So it's like, we just need to be prepared. I think this was a very good lesson in, okay, lack of preparation here, because everybody was struggling, get them online, do this, shut it down, bring them back. So I think for me, work, being on the campus part-time, I guess it's a good thing because it gets me, out of the house. However, everyone pretty much wears masks. You go up to the office, you're in the office. You do see your colleagues and stuff like that, but just kind of, still practicing social distancing and, wearing the mask has pretty much kept, me safe, I guess, during this whole time. So for that, I'm grateful. But yeah, I think every state, it just kind of varies, and, who's on the list, to go first to get the vaccine.
And I mean, it's crazy. UK has 30,000 students, 78,000 vaccinations have been given out at the University of Kentucky, 70% of the faculty and staff. And it isn't like the University of Kentucky is that far from the University of Tennessee, 160 miles, shares a border, same conference. Shanice over there at the University of Alabama, completely different, right? So that's one of the things, and I think one of the challenges as we deal with the equity lens is that's an equity thing. We shouldn't have one university who or one state because of its leadership being X, and one state because of its leadership being Y, who, to be frank and honest, didn't even think there was a virus until January 20th. Now, all of a sudden, it's really hard to get vaccine for something that you said during a whole election cycle didn't exist. Allie lives in Iowa, same situation, right? And so you compare these things and you look at what Governor Beshear has done. Forget about political party. Governor Beshear has just done a fantastic job. The University of Kentucky has done, I was just shocked. What do you mean you haven't heard anything about it? I mean, I still live in Knoxville. You haven't heard anything about vaccine? And nothing. Can't even get a test unless you go to your own doctor. And then you compare that to the work that Jamaica does in the Twin Cities, where for a short time, I was part of the team at Metro, and I got a test mailed to my house that I shipped back UPS and had the results in 2 days. I mean, that's completely crazy, that type of variation in inequity, right? In our nation. Is David still on, Allie?
He is.
Oh, he is. Okay, David, I wanted to ask you from an admission standpoint, right? We are dealing with, in particular, because of the racial unrest, the response then to the racial unrest, the continued amplification of angry, bitter voices of people that are trying to exclude others. How do you, especially as somebody who's dealing with admissions, has that been a concern with people that are thinking, is it safe for me, right? Is it safe for me as a BIPOC student? Is it safe for me as an ally? Is it safe for me as a person of color or an LGBTQ student to come to campus when oftentimes our campuses say, well, free speech, you have a right to say or be, and we've kind of allowed, in my opinion, a little too much space to let people say and do. And there's students who are legit afraid. So how do you deal with that, somebody who's dealing with the admission side and enrollment management side of OSU? You're on mute, David.
I think maybe it's not a mute issue, but maybe a microphone issue.
Right.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, David.
Okay. Yep. Chose the wrong microphone. One thing that has been really, I guess, I'm really optimistic, I guess, about our admissions process, and not just at Ohio State, but across the nation. For years, we were talking about standardized testing and how problematic that was for communities of color, low-income students, first-generation students. And it's been great for, one of the blessings of the pandemic, and I say that very, carefully, because it's been so traumatic for the whole world. But one of the good things that has come out of the pandemic is that we see we can do admissions work without standardized testing. That has been something that I've been really inspired by. And just as folks are talking about the changes that we've needed to make in the classroom, things that we've needed to change in just campuses in general, in and outside of the classroom, it's been really great to watch some of our leadership kind of squirm a little bit as we do things that they said we could never do. You know, we can't work from home. You got to come into the office. Now it's our new norm. So I'm really excited about that, because for me, it allows me to be able to go to leadership and say, hey, there's an inequity here that we need to address. And we get a little bit more, ears kind of perk up a little bit more when they say, okay, well, talk to me about that. You know, this area of our admissions process is, maybe not equitable to this certain community. We need to take a look at how we're addressing this particular issue on our campus that's happening right now, that, this community of students is voicing their concerns about, and people are a little bit more apt to listen. So I've been really happy about that. Also, something that we were noticing, I would say, and again, this isn't just at Ohio State, this was across the country. We were hearing about the changes that we were seeing in our enrollment between 2015, 2017. You're looking at the amount of numbers of international students who are, enrolling here, and our students of color who want to come to the middle of Ohio. We have great things in Ohio, but, with the things that are happening in the country, you might kind of wonder, is that a safe place? Is that a safe space for me? And so I think, to answer your question, it's been kind of not, I'm trying to think of the word. I look forward to seeing some more of the changes that are going to happen in the next few years, based off of the changes that we need to make. We can't just say, well, this is how it's always been done. We have to change so much, to Tyrone's point, Mr. Wilson's point, the idea that we can't do online classes is completely in the past, and we have to do online classes. We have to look at how do we make sure that students are getting their needs met, whether they're on campus or virtual. So I'm really excited, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done.
David, that's really well said. I think you're spot on. The only additional, if I could, I would add, is we have to be flexible and equitable to our staff, right? I mean, we have folks who don't want to work 8 to 5, and that should be fine. We have folks who want to, hey, I want to work 8 to 2, then I want to go home and get my kids off the bus. Then I want to be there with them. And then, you know what, I'll log back on at 8 after they go back to bed, and I'll finish my work, because you know what, my students are awake. The one thing that this has shown us, and this is the key for higher ed, if the institution that figures this out, that allows people to be people and human beings, and you know what, I don't need to be sitting in Minneapolis to do great work for Metro. I don't need to be sitting in Lexington to do great work for UK, right? I don't have to be doing that. The schools that figure that out are going to attract the talent because the millennials and Gen Zs are going to drive it.
Yeah.
Hey, you know what? I'm not going to be Fred Flintstone and go into the rock quarry just so you feel like I'm going to work, right? When my students just wake up and get going around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So it was never based on them. So that's really the hope. And the big hope I have is that the so-called nonprofit higher ed world, the state funded and our private colleagues, that we figure it out before the for-profit businesses do, because they will. Because that's a business model that works. And the institutions that can say to somebody, hey, Jamaica, yeah, I know you live in Minnesota, or I know you live in Arizona, but why don't you work at this actively anti-racist school in the heart of Minneapolis, St. Paul, where you can do like the work. And you know, you don't even have to come to this cold. You can just stay in Arizona. That is the coolest way to make this work. And I think that's the equity that we need to start with each other first. Because we always start with the students, you know, and I think that's important. But if we do it with each other and we treat each other right, it will trickle down to our students, right? One of the things I was going to ask Linda about is, Linda, because you do some alignment in career services, you're in the career services area, talk a little bit about equity and what are some of the things that you wish that institutions could have, especially for our students of color, whether it be internships. What are some of the things that students of color or students that are low income, that these inequities that are even more magnified with them?
Yeah, maybe access to, I don't know, part-time jobs, maybe access to, I mean, with career services, a lot of times students don't know what is available to them, right? A lot of students sometimes need internships, and they need paid internships because they can't afford to, you know, to not work. I have some students that are working 30 plus hours a week. And clearly that has a bearing on, you know, on their academics. But then I understand because they feel that they have to work, and that's, you know, it's a priority. So to see more opportunities for internships, maybe opportunities for our, you know, students of color study abroad. I know that, you know, as we're dealing with COVID, I'm sure those things will change eventually. But, you know, I had a student who was part of Haslam College of Business, and she actually did an internship virtually. But, you know, that was the area of the business school that actually provided that. So I think just, you know, taking a look at some of the things that, you know, our students of color need to take advantage of. I mean, even more so now, you know, when we talk about having the technology necessary, you know, for classes, because a lot of our students are struggling, even though, you know, the university tried to provide, what are the little cards like, you know, for Wi-Fi access or whatnot. But hey, what if I was dealing with a student who he missed a number of appointments, but it had a lot to do with, and I didn't know this, that first of all, they didn't have any power. And then just getting back on the internet and getting connected, it was a problem. But, you know, I was a little relentless there. So I kept going until I was able to get to him, because I knew that he wasn't missing the appointments, you know, just because, but there was something that was really, really going on. And so, you know, making sure that we're still taking a look at, you know, not only what existed before COVID, but even more so now, what exists now, and how hard it is sometimes for some of our students to be able to access these some of these services like Wi-Fi or like having a computer, those kind of things.
Well, it's really good. I think one of the things that you and I have talked about is the importance of preparing for life after. But as a first generation student, a low income student, a BIPOC student, you're so busy trying to just deal with the day to day. Hey, I got to pay for a fall, Because if I can't pay for fall, I can't register for spring. And I'm just drinking out of the fire hose. You don't have the luxury that privilege allows you to be able to study abroad or to be able to do an unpaid internship. How is that even possible when I owe $800 from last semester? And if I don't pay that off unpaid, what does it even look like for me? So, I mean, these are the kind of things, and David, just with some really good, clear insight, pointed this to us. We can decide, all of us in this industry can decide where we go, right? Just like it was the same way, you know, when we decided that we weren't going to be a country that leaned into hate, right? We can decide if we're going to lean into the new normal, or we're going to resist it like that get off my grass guy, or we're going to say, you know what, this is powerful. This allows someone sitting in Minneapolis, somebody in Tennessee, somebody in Ohio, somebody in Alabama, with people all over the country and all over the world to integrate. And how powerful is that for our low-income first-generation communities of color? They could have never communicated with people. They could have never been in rooms. Jamaica, we had an event this week with True Art Speaks and Latasha Brown from Black Voters Matter. And there were people from all over the country in that space. That levels the playing field. It's just up to us how we approach it, right? We have to give folks the tools and the coaching, as Shanice has talked about, on how to use that as an advantage and to make the world smaller. You don't have to get on a plane and fly to a conference. A student doesn't have to go study abroad to do an internship in Japan. They can sit in their living room in Memphis, Tennessee and do it. And so it's really up to us, especially my TRIO colleagues on here, that they have been, TRIO has been doing this work since 1964. It's really important that we start setting the tone for what America is gonna be. You know, somebody said, make America great again. I said, make America great, period. Period. That would be cool. That would be great. And honesty and love and reimagining and dealing with these inequities. So I appreciate everybody for being here in just dealing with, okay, there's some inequities. How are we going to fill it? How are we going to work on it? Because this isn't about diversity and inclusion. This is about inequity and repair that must be done in order to make things equitable. We can't just say we want right faces in right places. We can't just say, Jamaica, you're included, but you started 3 laps behind us. Now we have to do some repair. We have to do some work. And we now know, all of the caring, kind professionals in this world know what happens if we don't. This is our shot, right? For all of us, that we accept it with honesty and we pull our boots up and we start doing the hard work and leaning into each other. So I want to just really thank everyone for your time today, for your authenticity, for your expertise, for sharing it with us, all of the people watching. I want to turn it over to Ali and thank Doorway to College Foundation, who has been leading this work as a thought leader and a partner with TRIO and other folks in really creating the access David talked about, in helping students not only get to college, but through college, and help students with study skills really through some really cool online platforms. Ali, do you want to talk quickly about Doorway, and then we'll thank everybody and send them off?
Sure, thanks, Adam. Well, I'll just be under a minute because I know we're sensitive to time. We are, a nonprofit offering some test preparation, study skills spaces. We do a lot of partnership work. So really, if you're interested in preparing students for ACT, for SAT, pre-college type testing, that's something that we do a lot of partnership with. And we are doing a lot of that work virtually. I know that's been a topic of conversation, and we're in person too for those who need that. I did put the link in the chat, so go ahead and reach out to us there, and thank you so much.
Thank you all. Be safe.
Yeah, have the best day.
Thank y'all so much.
Thanks. Have a good one.